Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fallout. Today I'm going to be talking Saints versus Texans, that Monday Night Football game, reacting to it. As everybody knows by now, I'm watching every single game, every play, every week, really just to get you fantasy football and gambling and, waiver wire insight for all my fantasy football, daily fantasy football, and gambling crowd there. So let's just start, dig right in. Let's go to the Texans. They imported Laramie Tunsil in that trade with Miami. He had an impact, but obviously he's still acclimating. What concerns me and continues to concern me about the Texans is you have a franchise quarterback in Deshaun Watson. You need to spend some draft capital and build a freaking offensive line. Now, the Colts have done this, okay? The Texans need to do this. They need to protect the guy. On his Deshaun Watson's fantastic touchdown run, he came down, he was in the trainer's tent. I heard a stat yesterday that he was hit on 45%, or pressured at least, but I think hit on 45% of his dropbacks. That's a problem, okay? Deshaun Watson, keep him upright. He's a dynamic quarterback. He's fantastic. I still think it's funny that the Chicago Bears traded up to get Mitch Trubisky, and Deshaun Watson dropped to the Texans. It's madness. But hindsight is 2020, right, everybody? But Deshaun Watson, he's fantastic. He's got weapons. DeAndre Hopkins, I think, is probably the best receiver in football. He can produce. The great thing about Hopkins, if you're a fantasy football player, is that he can produce with Deshaun Watson. He can excel. But even if they go to a backup who's A.J. McCarron this year, he's still going to excel. He's one of the few receivers in the league that is good no matter who's throwing the ball. So you got to love him. There's no way you can acquire him. If by some miracle he's offered to you in a trade, early in the season, snap him up. He's going to produce no matter who's throwing the ball. Now let's see. Will Fuller is dynamic. He had a deep catch, but not a touchdown this week. He has that deep play connectivity with Deshaun Watson. We actually saw Kenny Stills get in the end zone in his first game with the Texans as well. And the running game for the Texans was actually really good against this strong Saints rushing defense. Carlos Hyde looked fantastic. Duke Johnson looked good out of the backfield. I think as the season progresses, Duke Johnson will be used even a little bit more in the flats and in short routes. And Carlos Hyde will be able to run the ball, man. They're doing well. They just need to pass protect because I'm just worried about Deshaun Watson's health. Now, for fantasy football fallout, if Hyde or if Duke Johnson are available in your league, they're probably only going to be available in leagues with short benches. But if they're available, you should snap them up. Will Fuller, I think, is a good waiver play because I do think he has a over-the-top capability. He's a great daily fantasy weekly play, kind of a more budget player, and he's a great streaming option if you're looking to fill in. Maybe if you got bit by Tyreek Hill getting injured and you missed out on some of these other wide receivers, he's a good one to get. Now the Saints started rusty. Drew Brees, you don't see him throw a lot of interceptions in the red zone, okay? They just started rusty, and that happens. This is going to happen. I've been saying it. I sound like a broken record in the series because week 1, week 2, we're going to see some sloppy play. We're going to see some penalties. We're going to see some missed opportunities. The Saints, Kamara looked like he was in midseason form. He looked good. We saw Latavius Murray got a touchdown. No shock there, at least to people who kind of paid attention to the Saints and how they try to rest Kamara. Look, Kamara's going to get in the end zone plenty, but Latavius Murray is going to be a viable player. If he's available in your league in waivers and you need a running back, he's a great guy to pick up. Remember, a couple years ago, before I think it was 2017, Ingram and Kamara, they both had well over 1,000 yards. Might have been over like 1,400 yards, both of them. Had a ton of touchdowns between the two of them. Latavius Murray has a lot of opportunity. Michael Thomas, I think, is the second best receiver in the league behind DeAndre Hopkins. I don't know. I mean, the defenses around the league, they know it's coming. They know that Michael Thomas is going to be kind of the primary pass catcher, and they still get him the ball. Credit Sean Payton and the play calling team. Credit Drew Brees for always being accurate. But man, Michael Thomas is good. Secondary, again, had a really, really good game. I don't think that's going to be typical, but it's something you want to pay attention to, especially in daily fantasy leagues. If you're really thin at receiver, if you're in a super deep league, he's available. You can pick him up. But I still like Traquan Smith, who also got in the end zone this week. I'd like Traquan Smith to be the better of those guys. Jared Cook, I was a little down on just because there's so many weapons. There's too many, mouths to feed in this offense. I'm not the biggest Jared Cook fan this season. I think he's a great tight end. He's great for the Saints. If you're a fan of the Saints, you got to love it. But I still think in the passing game, you got Kamara, you got Smith, you got Ginn, you have obviously Michael Thomas. There's a lot of mouths to feed. I think Taysom Hill got in the end zone. There's a lot to focus on this offense. They're very dynamic. They're They're a Super Bowl contender, certainly. I expect the Saints to do better against the run. I think the defense will be better. The Houston Texans defense, I think, will be better. It was just two really good teams playing each other. Credit both teams. There's some value on the waiver wire. Like I said, Will Fuller. Stills, you might want to take a look. If he did that well in his first game, maybe he'll ascend, but I still think Fuller's the bigger kind of daily fantasy play and the stream play there. And then again, in the Saints, Traquan Smith and Ted Ginn are probably sitting on your waiver wire. You can pick them up. So there you go. There's another episode. Stay tuned. We're going to be talking Broncos and Raiders probably in the next video here. So like us, subscribe, comment. We'll be interactive.